Good morning to everyone. We have Ms. Lavanya S. Advocate on our platform today. Lavanya S. Advocate High Court of Karnataka with us in our platform today. She has done her advocate with BSc Visual Communication degree and currently pursuing diploma in cyber law at the Asian School of Cyber Law, Pune. Before professing advocacy, had a successful stint at the broadcasting media with a rich experience of 14 plus years since 1995. She has done her diploma in cyber law in 2020 and 21 with Asian School of Cyber Law, and she has pursued her law from Vivipura College of Law, Bangalore from 2013 to 2016. She is pursued her bachelor degree from Andamalai University, and she has done diploma in copy editing from Macmillan, Bangalore, and she also has pursued diploma in multimedia image from Chennai.
Yes. First of all, a very warm Saturday morning welcome to all of you. And thanks for sharing your time and, coming into the platform because this morning, I feel that it is a very important morning to all one of us because thanks to COVID, we have, experiencing a lot of changes in everybody's life. And today it has become very pertinent, especially with respect to internet usage and how it is dominating each one of our lives. So I feel that this particular subject on cyber law is not only for lawyers. So it is a very important subject, not only with respect to advocates like us, but even to a common man, because today the entire world is shrunk to an extent that we are all connected through wires more than our native touch, like interpersonal relationship. So such being the case, I feel that it is very important to address this particular topic, especially how a common man has to take necessary precautions in the cyber world today. So I just start off with my presentation, and I would like to take any questions post the presentation. So first I will go on with my presentation. See, no longer is geography defined in boundaries these days. Geography is become history thanks to COVID, because it is nothing but a wake-up call for all of us with respect to maintaining our cyber security. And there is a myth generally in the cyber world that hackers are focusing or attacking only rich people. That is a myth. To be honest, a hacker does not differentiate between a rich or a poor person. How? In the mere sense that even our debit card or credit card, there are a lot of things which is happening in the cyber crime these days, that even a common man's debit card or a credit card is being hacked. That is the reality now. And with respect to this, India in the cybercrime, India has been ranked as the third most cyber affected country, apart from the USA and the UK. According to Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant, he says that we have to be very careful with the 3 C's, that is Corona now, the cyber challenge, and also the China, because these are the imminent threat before each and every Indian. And India sees almost 375 cyber attacks every day. Not one or two, but 375 cyber attacks every day. And nearly 4 lakh of malware are found every day in our computers. How the malware spreads faster in computer systems and via internet. That is the hard fact. And when it comes to this hacking, normally people think that rich people are being targeted and not the poor and not the governments. But it is not so. Actually speaking, the hackers attack the government, the corporates, that is the companies, and also the individuals. Have you ever known that a nuclear power plant in Kudankulam in Tamil Nadu has been hacked? So that is a real fact. A cyber attack is possible even through a government platform, even through government agencies, even through companies, and even through individuals. And coming on to this picture of debit and credit cards of hacking, in year 2018 alone, hackers were able to siphon off nearly 900 million rupees from the Cosmos Bank in the western city of Pune through a malware attack from one of its data suppliers. So a hacker knows the means because they know the way of technology working and how it can be corrupted. So only a corrupted system can leak the information or leak the data and thereby causing greater damage, both financial as well as emotional, with respect to emotional also. Again, in 2019, the RBI had taken the stern warning issued by the Singapore-based cybersecurity firm group, IB, that nearly 1.2 million debit cards of our Indians were available online, which means that our debit card details, like for instance, our CVV, that is the last 3 digits in the debit card, as well as our details of the debit card, the financial stage of our debit card, like which account has more money, which account has what kind of securities, all this has been leaked. How was it leaked? Now, when it comes to India, see, India is the most vulnerable when it comes to these kind of cyber crimes. And this is because we solely rely on international banking networks like SWIFT to make our day-to-day transactions. It might be the domestic, it might be the international ones. So these are the ways where the hacker is able to access the details of our respective debit cards and credit cards. Similarly, Mr. Arun Sukumar, head of Cyber Initiative Observer Research Foundation, states that international gateways are open vectors of attacks for Indians, and especially for India, because we do not have our indigenous gateway. So thereby we are using an international gateway which is open and vulnerable to these kind of attacks. Similarly, Symantec cybersecurity company in its report stated that India is one of the top 3 countries which has been cyber attacked, especially due to phishing and malware. Phishing is nothing but you receive certain authentic looking identical emails from various organizations, and when you click on that link, it leads to this vulnerable website, and thereby your data being leaked. And malware is nothing, once again, it is one of the virus which has been infected into the system, that is the internet, via internet, and it attacks your computer and thereby corrupting the entire data or damaging the data. And when it comes to India's worldwide ranking in cyber attacks, especially for the last year and this year alone, nearly almost 28.75% of mobiles were infected by malware. These days, we do all of our transaction using our smartphone, thinking that it is very secured and safe. However, though it looks like that, it is not so, because it is also once again vulnerable to malware attacks. Similarly, the computers have also been infected by malware to a percentage of 11.74. So the hackers have means and ways to hack the system, or maybe your mobile, or maybe your laptop, or maybe your desktop. Hacking in simple terms means getting unauthorized access to your system. It can be your laptop, it can be your desktop, it can be your mobile phones. So anything which is connected through an internet is supposed to be a system which can be hacked very easily by a hacker. So even our mobile phones, our smartphones fall under that category. And especially we have an index which has been conducted every frequent yearly once by the Global Cyber Security Index, and they have these 5 pillars. These 5 pillars, they think that needs to be given greater attention by each and every country to resolve cybercrime and to ensure that our data, be it personal or the sensitive personal data of each and every individual or each and every citizen of the country does not get leaked. The 5 pillars which the GCI mentioned are the legal, the technical, the organizational, the capacity building, and also the cooperation. When it comes to legal, the GCI prescribes that every country should, create or enforce certain stringent cyber criminal legislations. And technical, when it comes to technical, mere creation of law or enforcing a bill or enforcing an act does not suffice. So it has to come into action. Then there comes the technical team, that is a national computer response team, which helps the implication or this particular legislation into force or the enforceability into force. Then when it comes to strategizing, the organizational team has to work on how it can strategize this cyber security methods and to devise certain strategy so that such kind of crime does not happen or is being kept under watch. And when it comes to capacity building, how do we reach out to the people? See, the public awareness is very less. So the more and more the public are aware, the less the crimes, especially the cyber crimes, will happen. And the cooperation of all the international fora is the most important key, because today no longer is again geography a history, because there is no boundaries, because for a hacker, he does not operate in a jurisdictional fashion. For him, the entire globe is his jurisdiction. So such being the case, a hacker who can sitting far away in US can hack a system in India. So that being the case, the international forums has to be strengthened, and we have to have cooperation between the countries to ensure that we curtail the cybercrime that is a huge menace which is happening right now. Why this is happening in India especially? The digital literacy in India is very, very low, because we feel that people who have access to smartphones are smart. But however, it is very nice to seem or look like that, but it is not the case, because most of our smartphone users these days are either from the middle rung or the bottom of the pyramid, which means that these days even a vendor is able to access a smartphone and pay or through Google Pay or Phone Pay and other UPI methods. So such being the case, where do we have the digital literacy, or where do we follow certain cyber etiquettes to ensure that we don't fall a victim or a prey to such kind of cyber crimes? So our digital literacy in India has to be enhanced, and various platforms have to be created for people to know that this kind of digital literacy is very important, and because of which they can be saved of lot of implications which are arising due to cybercrime. And what kind of fraud is generally happening these days? It is either hacking of the systems through unauthorized entries, or while using your debit cards or credit cards at the ATM, people, the hackers fix something called as the skimmers or the keyboard cameras to ensure that whatever PIN you enter is being immediately reflected onto their system, so that they later on get into the same number or their PIN and take away your hard-earned money. And next comes is a phishing. The phishing is nothing but you get a lot of emails these days stating that you have won a lottery of 1 million. Please click on this link and you can get the money. So these kind of emails are nothing but phishing also, because they presume to be coming from authorized organizations, like for instance your banks maybe, or from genuine organizations, big organizations like UNICEF or something like that. But the case is, it is not so. These are phishing mails, and we need to be exercise abundant caution and ensure that we don't fall as a victim to these kind of phishing emails. And then comes the identity fraud also these days. It is quite common these days that you can see a lot of Facebook profiles in the social media and other platforms, or even emails to that extent, being created in the fake identity of somebody else. For instance, a guy sitting in a rural village can create a website in the name of a popular film star, stating that it is the website of that popular film star. But that is not the case, because that is purely a identity theft and an identity fraud which has been happening. And what are the different types of cyber crimes targeted at India at present? You can see that there are a lot of credit card frauds which have been reported time and again. And you can come across this cyber bullying which is happening now due to this pandemic. Online classes have commenced, and a lot of cyber bullying is happening, where in a particular platform, apart from the concerned attendees, unauthorized access is being got from another person, a stranger, who takes over the meeting and also starts bullying the children. So a lot of cyber bullying crime has been reported these days due to this online sessions happening. And apart from that, you have this online gambling, which is illegal also. And also it affects the intellectual property rights of certain crimes with respect to software piracy, trademarks, violation of trademarks and copyright and all those things. And there's a very common one which is encountered by companies these days are source code theft. The source code theft is nothing but an employee who works in an organization is going to quit or resign the organization in a short while, is able to capture or able to retrieve the source code from the company and post it into codesource.com and ensure that the code source is being kept for his access. And when he leaves his job or company, he is able to retrieve it from the codesource.com company again. So these kind of source code theft is also very much present these days. So that is also a major concern. And again, once again, email spoofing is also happening, where a lot of emails are being, coming from various unauthorized people, and we tend to fall as a victim. And you have this cyber stalking also, where you are being watched, your internet activities are being watched, your internet food being monitored, your digital footprints are being monitored. So we should be very, very careful in using our digital means, because it is nothing but however much we can say, we say that no, we don't have any such footprints left behind. The hackers or the unauthorized people who want to create damage to you are already accessing all your sensitive information and personal data information, and they are having a sheer game plan to ensure that your hard-earned money is lost in no time. So we have to be careful on that also. And when it comes to international treaties, the first comprehensive international effort was in dealing with such kind of criminal problems was initiated by the OECD, that is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Subsequently, the Budapest Convention, also known as the Convention on Cybercrime, is the only binding international instrument on the issue of cybercrime, which is present currently. And this convention serves a guideline for countries to develop a comprehensive national legislation against cybercrime. So they help the countries to formulate the laws, and they also share certain guidelines to help cybercrime to minimize or to completely eradicate the cybercrime to the maximum. And there are various cyber legislations across the globe. For instance, in USA, you have the No Electronic Theft Act, which was enforced in the year 1997. You have the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in the year 1998. You have the Electronic Signatures in Global and National Commerce Act, that is eSign Act, in the year 2000. And you also have the Children's Internet Protection Act in the year 2001. Similarly, our immediate neighbor China also is equipped with a proper digital act, that is the Computer Information Network and Internet Security Protection Management Regulation Act. The Regulations on Computer Software Protection Act in the year 2002. And in Australia, you have the Cybercrime Act, which was enforced in the year 2001. And in the United Kingdom, you have the Data Protection Act, enforced in the year 1998, and also the Electronic Communication Act in the year 2000. Recently, in order to have a comprehensive and a major enforceability, the European Union has on 25th May 2018 enforced the General Data Protection Regulation Act, whereby the entire European Union or the entire Europe has been safeguarded, and the citizens privacy has been well protected, because privacy is a fundamental right and that has to be protected. When it comes to Indian legislations, you have the basic Constitution of India, and apart from that, you have the various legislative frameworks like the Information Technology Act of 2000, the Information Technology Regulations and Rules of 2011, the Indian Penal Code of 1860, the Indian Evidence Act 1872, and the Code of Criminal Procedure, Bankers Book Evidence Act, and also the RBI has enacted a Payment and Settlement Systems Act, whereby it regulates and supervises the payment system in India to ensure that the transactions are being transparent and smooth. And our Indian government is proposing on a Personal Data Protection Act, which is still in the flows of the two houses of parliament, who are reviewing the probabilities of the act, and it is very soon, it is going to be enforced into our systems, and that I think will help to a greater extent in protecting our personal data. I now come to the main subject of addressing today's topic on the common man in cyber world. See, I feel that the common man needs to know certain basic things which will help him to encounter in the cyber world, especially when it comes to our day-to-day transactions. The cyber law, there is no specific cyber law in India as of now, and we are all governed by the Information Technology Act 2000, and the section, and almost 90 sections are there in the IT Act. However, it cannot be an exhaustive presentation for the day, but I will try to cover on the 12 main important things which any common man needs to know in order that we have a smooth functioning of our day-to-day procedures. Section 43B, read with section 66, relates to computer-related offenses. For instance, we may all be using our phones and we may all be using certain softwares, but have we ever wondered whether those softwares are pirated or whether it is our, we have made purchase to a product? Hardly we do that. Hardly we think that, it is okay to, download a software from a website. It is okay to download a free, app from a phone, all this. But nothing comes free, because with free, we also pay the price of our privacy. We also pay the price of our information. This is the hard fact. So as per section 43B, read with section 66, it clearly states that downloading data without the permission of the owner comes or attracts this particular section, and we are punishable under this act. And the punishment is not less than 3 years of punishment and 5 lakhs of fine or both. And it is a cognizable offense. A cognizable offense meaning that even an informant can inform the police and the police can arrest us. That is called as cognizable offense. And especially I'll illustrate this particular section with a simple example. Here in this particular section 43B, read with section 66, downloading any data without the permission of the owner is an offense. How? Let's get into this illustration. Kevin is browsing the internet and he comes across a useful software program stored on a website. He immediately thinks that it will be helping him or helpful to him, and he downloads it from the internet on his computer. And then he installs it into his system. So this is clearly attracting this particular section, which is cognizable offense and punishable too. Now, what do you mean by unauthorized copying and extracting of data? Here in this illustration, Shilpa has purchased a CD containing songs in CDA format. Using her computer, she converts the songs into MP3 format. So she has now extracted the MP3 format song from the original audio CD that she had purchased. So any unauthorized copying and extracting of data and having it within yourself is fair enough. But when you share it or when you use it in a public platform, then it is an offense and it attracts this particular section. Then we go on to data theft. See, very common we would have heard or we could have come across, we would have read in the papers also, data theft which has been happening all over. What is it? Basically, like in this illustration, it clearly enumerates that Samir uses his pen drive and copies the data from Pranav's computer during his absence. This clearly amounts to the offense of copying data as per the statute through the original, though the original remains unchanged or intact in Pranav's computer system. Now, Samir can say, I have not done any offense. I have just simply thought I will copy this particular, a folder from my friend because he was not around and I thought it is my right to take it. No, that isn't the case. As long as the friendship is fair enough and fine enough, it is okay. But the same friendship, when it turns sour, that can become an offense to Samir. Any day, Pranav can say that he has stolen certain data, which was very, very confidential to him. So we should exercise due diligence when it comes to copying data from another person or another person's laptop or anything for that matter without the permission or obtaining the permission. As per the eyes of law, it is an offense. As long as the relationship runs smooth, it is okay. And when when the relationship is going on rough weather, then I think the same thing can turn against you. So this needs to be exercised caution again here. And one more data theft which we can easily come across these days is an employee-employee relationship when it gets sour. Like for instance, in this example, we have an employee who keeps forwarding all his or her official emails from her official emails to her personal email ID. So this particular thing also amounts to crime, and it is nothing like copying or getting access of that company's details and their vendors or their customers to the personal usage of that particular employee. Again, here also, as Sameer's in my previous illustration, here also, as long as the employer-employee relationship is fair enough, it gets on well. Now you might wonder, then what do? I mean, like I need to carry on my work at home these days and I need to work. So how can I get it done? In that case, it is always better and advisable to get it in writing from the concerned, senior who's, whom you're reporting to, stating that this can be done and this is permissible for this employee to take it home or, have access and transfer it to her personal email ID to work. So this kind will save the employee from such kind of, ugly scenes in the future. Suppose when the employer-employee relationship is going to no longer continue in the manner which it had continued earlier. Now, there is also this identity theft, which I had briefly spoken during my initial, beginning of this presentation. Like, for instance, here in our illustration, Mr. Guru creates a Facebook profile by portraying himself as Hrithik Roshan and by using Hrithik Roshan's pictures. This particular offense attracts this section as per section 66C of the Information Technology Act. He is again punishable with an imprisonment of 3 years, and the fine might be imposed up to 1 lakh or both, whichever is fair enough to the judge. And this is also a cognizable offense. And the very silver lining of this offense is it is a bailable offense and it is considered as a white collar crime. But these days, no longer it is a white collar crime, because every youngster or a youth who wants to portray himself as some X or some successful person adapts to this kind of identity theft. Now, one more identity theft which is very common is in this particular illustration is quite interesting, because a current junior employee in a bank, he oversees a senior Abdul typing his password into his official computer. Then one fine day when Karan ensures that Abdul is not around, he logs into the bank system using Abdul's password and transfers certain sum of money to his account. Now he will be liable under this section. See, here I would like to emphasize one thing, like very often, though inadvertently, we all fall a victim or a prey. For instance, it is not only limiting to this particular illustration. See, whenever we step out, when we make a UPI payment or something like that, when we asked for the password, we immediately take our smartphones and start typing. We fairly understand, or we fairly realize that there is somebody who's peeping from our shoulders. So you should ensure that whoever is around does not have access to the password which you are typing, because those kind of things can lead to these kind of crimes. Then you have this spreading of virus in computer system, which has been enumerated in section 43C of the Information Technology Act. Here, we all might have come across this kind of viruses affecting our system. Like it's nothing but a malware or a spyware, which has access to the system and also reads our internet behavior and stores, and the hacker and made available to the hacker to hack our system and our data. In this particular illustration, I would like to mention the Lovebug virus, which comes as an attachment to an email with the subject "I love you," or it can be anything for that matter. You have successfully won, or you are a winner, or anything like that. When a victim clicks on this attachment, what happens is the virus overwrites all the files on the victim's computer, and with the chunk data, thereby destroying the entire data in full. So we are giving access with our own permission. So what happens is the hacker is able to damage the system and also steal the personal information of us, and thereby causing financial loss as well as confidential matters which we have kept. Then here comes the damaging of a computer system. See, here this is quite possible, not only physically damaging a desktop or a laptop, but even the software. See, for instance, it can be a software crash which could have happened to your laptop or a desktop, or even a physical damage. In this particular illustration, Ravi, by his activities, crashed the hard disk of Preetham, or breaks the laptop of Preetham, or destroys his laptop. Then Ravi attracts this particular section, and he is again punishable under this section. So we have to ensure that we do not have or give access to unknown people to use our system or laptops or our mobile phones these days, because we do not know like who would be the hacking our systems. So unless and until we know the people, we are not supposed to give access to our very confidential data which has been stored in our computer system or your laptop or your mobile phones. So we should ensure that the systems are well protected through a password, and unknown or unauthorized entry is not possible. Again, when it comes to tampering or manipulating a computer system, here in this particular illustration, Pratik deliberately deletes or even modifies the contents of a folder is also an offense. Sometimes you modify the source code, sometimes you modify certain things in the folder which is not the original. So that also again attracts this particular section, and it is a punishable under this section. And the punishment is not severe though, but you are liable to pay the damages for the victim who's to be compensated. Then you have this particular section 66A. These days it is very prevalent among youth and especially college going, even nowadays, even school going kids, sending offensive messages. Like for instance, if you send some offensive messages or even a sarcastic remark about your colleague or anybody, that also attracts this particular section. So we need to be careful on the messages on what we are sending and to whom we are sending. In this particular case, Air India cabin crew members were arrested and jailed for nearly 12 days for posing derogatory remarks against the Prime Minister's office and the national flag and against the Supreme Court. So this kind of things are very prevalent these days. Why? Because of the access to social media and the access to smartphones by even a 4-year-old kid. So we need to administer and exercise due care while giving our mobile phones or our systems to the kids, because they will not know the veracity of the problem and they would be ending up in a very, very difficult situation because of this cybercrime, which is growing these days. The particular case law is a very landmark case law of the Apex Court, Shreya Singhal versus Union of India, which was pronounced on 24th March 2015. This completely struck down the entirety of Section 66A as considering it as violative of Article 19(1)(a) and not saved under 19 subclause 2 of the Constitution of India. Now you have this violation of privacy in Section 66E. Here in this particular case, I think it is a common hearsay or a common experience these days through reading through newspapers and watching news, because they come across this particular violation of privacy stating that you went to a shop and you didn't know, without your knowledge they have taken some pictures of you, or they have taken some video of you which is not through your consent, which again falls under this category of section, and this is punishable too. Like for instance, in this illustration, Sana was trying out a new dress in a changing room of a clothing store. Chetan, an employee over there, has hidden a camera and he has recorded the Sana's changing of the clothes. Now Chetan is 100% liable under this section, and it is a cognizable offense where even an informant, not only Sana, can give a complaint. Even an informant, her mother or a sister or a friend whom she had shared this news, can give this complaint to a police station, and it is a cognizable offense, and the Chetan can be arrested immediately. And the punishment for this crime is 3 years of imprisonment and a fine up to 2 lakhs. Now, the last one which I would like to address is with respect to child pornography, which is happening these days due to the online sessions happening all over the globe. Now, the children are the easy targets. Now, how does this hacker, differentiate or distinguish between, victims? It's the soft targets are children, the elderly people, and the gullible ones. The gullible ones in the sense, those who lack the digital literacy or those who do not follow the digital etiquettes. So these are the soft targets, and these are the people who are prone to cyber crimes victims. So for instance, in this particular illustration, Prabhu is an online tutor and he has been harassing this 9-year-old girl by engaging in an act of cyberbullying. Now, Prabhu is definitely liable under this section, and this is a very stringent section as per the IT Act, and it clearly states that on the first conviction or the first time conviction, it is 5 years of imprisonment and up to 10 lakhs of rupees. However, subsequently, if the same person is been engaging in this kind of offenses, then his punishment is not going to be limited to 5 years, but it is going to exceed to 7 years, and the fine is going to be 10 lakhs. So it is also a cognizable offense, and any informant can inform the police and the particular person will get arrested. So these are the soft targets, and generally speaking, people have to exercise due diligence when it comes to being in the cyber world, because cyber world is nothing but you are open to the world. Though it is a boon, it is also a bane with respect to not only information, you're also exposing yourself and there is no privacy, guarded privacy. So that being the case, we all have to be a cyber warrior in our respective digital usage. But for that, however much we say that the governments have to, enforce certain acts, and the companies have to take due diligence and due care, it ultimately ends up to the end user, that is you and me. Because unless and until we administer, we exercise our caution, I think nobody can protect us. So we have to ensure that we follow certain kind of cyber etiquette and then engage in this kind of cyber world activities. With respect to the hierarchy of authorities and the courts, like when you have been a victim, now whom do we approach and what do we do? See, the first immediate thing is either you can go for a civil remedy or a criminal remedy. Suppose if you're going to go for a civil remedy, then you can always raise a complaint through a cyber lawyer and present it before the adjudicating officer as per section 46, who will take charge of this. And the very important key line of this particular section is the case or the complaint which has been lodged before him has to be completed within 6 months. So that is a very important remedy which is before us. Then if you don't feel happy about this adjudicating officer's pronouncement, then you can always approach a cyber appellate tribunal as per section 48. And again, if you're still not aggrieved by this order, you can approach the High Court as per section 62 in an appeal by preferring an appeal before the High Court. And if still you're feeling aggrieved by the judgment, then there is always the apex court where one can reach. Now, the available remedies, as I was mentioning to you, for any common man is, it can be a criminal remedy or a civil remedy. If it is a criminal remedy, you have to lodge a complaint before the police station at the nearest jurisdiction or at a cyber cell police station. If it is a civil remedy, you need to claim compensation for the damages, then you need to approach the adjudicating officer as per section 45 for a faster remedy, which has to be disposed within 6 months. Now, what has the government got to do now? The government has to do something about it. So we all say that the government has to formulate laws and other things. Yes, of course, yes, it is. But however, though the end user cannot be blamed, but we have to also enforce that we also follow certain digital etiquettes. That is the main thing to curb this menace of cybercrime. So it is for the government and institution to provide security in financial transactions. Definitely, yes. But the onus is also on us. There is the computer emergency response team, which are the frontline warriors who take care of the India's digital infrastructure too. So unless and until we all together exercise our due diligence with respect to usage of this digital usage, it is very difficult to curb this menace. So I only hope that though it's a vast, exhaustive subject, I will not be able to really comprehend it in this short span and get every detail into it. I think I have just touched base on the salient features of this particular law, especially, and pertaining to the common man. So I want everybody to be a cyber warrior and also be cyber ready.
There's a question, ma'am, here.
Yes.
Will there be chances of hacking the debit card details because of more online purchases we make, especially during this pandemic situation?
Yes.
How the marketing guys get details of our mobile phone numbers from the mobile service providers?
Yes. See, mobile service providers, that's what I'm trying to tell you right from the presentation. Unless and until necessary, you need not share your personal details with respect to your date of birth, your email address, or for that matter, even your official email address or other things, because those are the things when the hackers target, yours will also come under that category and it can also be hacked. So in order to do that, you should avoid, or wherever it is necessary, that particular information alone has to be furnished to the people. Or if they ask for further information, you can ask them, you can question them, and you can ask them how they are going to protect your privacy. And whether if it is not so, then you all have the right to object in sharing such kind of information.
Okay. There is one more question. It's a
Yes.
wonderful and very useful session. All the compliments, and followed by a question is how and who normally or authorized to perform this task? Any guidelines from Indian IT Act? Some
Can you
thoughts.
please come again? Can you please repeat the question?
In order to apply the legal provisions,
Correct.
there would be a need to perform a damage assessment as input. How and who normally are authorized to perform this task? Any guideline from the IT Act? Some thoughts.
Yes. See, you once the victim has to realize that he has encountered this damage. That is the primary thing. Unless you know that you are a victim, you cannot seek a remedy in any forum or any tribunal or any court for that matter. So a victim first has to realize that he has been victimized, and certain things, for instance, in bank transactions, we are all we must have encountered this particular common thing, like without your consent, your money has been used. So what is the reprieve for that? Immediately, it is our due diligence to go approach the bank authorities, stating that you have not, made this transaction, and there is a rule or a proviso as per the RBI, which many of our customers are not aware, that the banks are liable to compensate the customers. So when you encounter such kind of illegal transactions or some kind of transaction which was not authorized by you, immediately you should ensure that you go to the bank and ask for a clarification, seek a clarification. And if they say, no, it is your password, you have not protected it, and you have not, taken due diligence, there is nothing like that, because the RBI, as per the statute, has clearly given instructions and guidelines to the banks that when any customer comes reporting like that, it is the duty of the banks to compensate the customer. So how many customers who are operating in banks do know this fact? So these are the things the banks authorities or the people will never tell this. Because why would they tell? Because it will be a loss to the bank. So henceforth, we as customers, as I rightly told you even during the presentation, we have to be our own cyber warriors. We cannot expect the government or the companies or the banks to protect our information, our monetary assets or whatever it is. Unless you show your keenness in protecting yourself, there is nobody to protect in the cyber world, because cyber world is now a vast. It is not containing to one particular jurisdiction where you can pinpointedly say that the hacker is coming only from this location or this jurisdiction. So that being the case, you need to be very alert, and you need to be exercising due diligence.
Okay. One more question.
Yes.
Saving the debit card details is a threat or risk, is it not?
I would 100% say that it is an imminent threat. Please do not, we all think that, our smartphones will help us in, making our life simpler and easier. But that is not the case. Your smartphones are, easy targets for hackers. So kindly avoid saving your PIN card numbers, your bank information, or your sensitive personal details or data in your smartphones or in your computers. Or if you're doing so also, you should ensure that your gadgets or your smartphones are well protected by a password. These days they say that use your fingerprint scanner and do it. Even the fingerprint scanner these days are also being hacked. So I would suggest that if you're going to have such kind of transactions, it is ideally better that you have it in a normal phone, because a normal phone is used only for receiving and taking calls. But whereas your smartphone is always, acting as a spy to you, as well as it can also act as a friend and a support to you, because a spy when it comes to, tracking your digital footprints, and as a friend when it comes to easy access of your daily life in your fingertips. So it is always ideally better when you're having or handling such transactions to use a small ordinary button phone, which is ideally better, and the smartphone for your other needs.
Okay. Other question is, if a saving bank account with a public sector bank, if one does not have debit card nor internet operations, how still it is safe if you only operate through physical transactions?
That is agreeable to the extent as long as you're transacting and you're withdrawing money and depositing money. But the very same public organization is also vulnerable. If you had seen in my presentation, the government owned Kudangulam power plant was hacked. So that is very vulnerable. So the vulnerability does not limit to public organizations or private organization. In any organization, as I rightly told, an hacker does not differentiate between rich and poor, an organization or a government or an individual. For him, it is to have access, an unauthorized access, to thereby damage your system, steal the information, and steal your hard-earned money. So we are all susceptible. Only thing is, in that case, you have to ensure that you always have a check on your accounts, like, updating your passbook and ensuring that no transactions are missing, because that is when you will know if you're doing a physical daily basis transaction without the online help. So that is the only option. You can check your passbooks every now and then, say every 10 days once, to ensure that your accounts are safe.
The other question is, how can we protect our children from the risk of cyber crimes like horror games, sexual harassments, drugs, etc., from where we can report and get the police or legal help?
Yes, we can always, there is a COPPA Act, which says that Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. See, there is an act which is being in enforcement. So only thing is, we have to immediately report it to the nearest cyber cell police station and bring that to the knowledge of the cyber cell that this kind of activity has happened. And we should not feel ashamed, because we these days feel that, okay, if I go report it, what is the stigma? What is the repercussions? No, it is not so, because by we being mute, we are also in a way helping the hacker or the such kind of fraudsters online. So that should not happen. So immediately we should take the initiative. We should be the first to go report to the authorities. Only when we bring it to the knowledge of the authorities, some kind of action can be taken. And especially when it comes to the home front, I would advise parents of these days to ensure that the smartphones are being given only for that particular usage. Like, for instance, online classes, fair enough. But post that, I would ensure that it is not ideally suitable for the kids to have the screen time more, due to two reasons: for such kind of cyber crimes that can happen, and also with respect to health hazards like the eyes and the other things. So it is always ideally safe to protect it with your password, and also restrict the screen time for children.
Anybody has got
Madam,
more questions?
I have one point to discuss. It's not a question. It is
Yes.
just a open point. Nowadays, we are reading in the news that even educated people, they are very succumbing to that gifts. They just give their details, and also they scan that QR code and all.
Correct, sir.
And they are losing a lot of money. I don't know. I mean, what is your just a statement or observation why it is happening, something like that?
Sir, that is what I told you, sir. Our digital literacy is very poor. Our digital etiquette is very poor. We think that I'm not blaming anybody for this, neither the government nor the individuals, but we all feel that after the boom of this 2000, that is the internet era, we are all so overwhelmed by the information which is coming across. And when it comes free, And Indians are, so eager or very happy to take anything which is free. But as I rightly told, there is no free lunch in this world. So everything comes with a price tag. So we have to ensure that whenever we use such kind of digital methods of payment or digital transactions, we have to ensure that apart from the one which we are going to transact, there are no other details in that particular smartphone to ensure that minimum loss. See, I'm not going to say that they're not going to be loss at all. It is going to be in a day. I mean, today it might be my neighbor, tomorrow it might be me also. But how far we can minimize it is what we have to right now think, because as per the GCA also, unless there is an international fora where it can help the countries, there is no possibility that we can curtail this cybercrime overall. So it is going to be there, just like how the other crimes are there. But the digital literacy will help to a greater extent. The digital awareness and reaching out to people with respect to following certain digital etiquettes will definitely help, because when you're more aware, you will be conscious of using, and when you're conscious of using, you will know for what you're using. So you will not be using it, or you will not be a mere simple act of keeping your phone in your desk in your office and taking a short tea break will also prove to be costly. So you have to ensure when you have certain details on your phone, you have to ensure that it is being kept safe. So certain, simple, measures we have to exercise for us to be digitally safe.
And one more point, this in general, like this science and technical websites like ResearchGate, Uni Academy, then other advisor and all. Do you think they are all genuine or something like that? Because we are using that. This thing.
Sir, I'm afraid I cannot comment on that authenticity of that websites, because that should not, that is not in my ambit. But however, I would suggest that as an individual, when you opt for it, it is ideally better to check on the authenticity of such, websites. And you always have this, simple means to check. In our website, in the taskbar itself, you can find these days that whether a website is secured or not by a simple observation, like when it is, HTTPS, it means it's secure. And you also have this, lock kind of icon, the taskbar to ensure that it is a secured website. So these are the simple things which we have to exercise in our day-to-day life, which we sometimes overlook, which we, due to so many factors, we might be in a hurry to log into a particular website and check the details. So we have to ensure that we are correctly entering that website, or whether it is a malicious website. So these two things are very important. And even when it comes to email also, you these days get a lot of emails, like a lot of spoofing is happening. So to avoid that, I would simply suggest that do not click any link which takes you to another website, unless and until you verify the authenticity of that particular website. Please do not click on the link which is there on your email. That is the first step we have to do to curtail this particular, spoofing kind of phishing frauds.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Welcome, sir.
As far as internet banking is concerned, is there any facility that we can start this internet banking before we do any transaction? Start it only when we do transaction and then close it again and stop it again. Is there any such facilities there?
No, can you please repeat your question?
In case of internet banking, now see, I am...
Correct. You are in US. Yes.
I'm residing in Bangalore. I'm in US now.
Yes.
I have to make all the payments only through internet banking.
Correct.
In case, is there any facility there that I can completely stop the transaction till I make it sort of?
Sir, I would love to say yes, but the fact is not so, because there is no 100% security in internet, sir. There is no such 100% security or safety measure which is available online to all of us. We are all yes.
I'm not talking about a safety measure. Is it any possibility with the bank that you can completely stop the transactions? Only you can do that.
That you have to, that you can have access with your bank and find out that, sir. Because as far as
code, you have to use your code to start the transaction, so that after every transaction you can use the code and
I would suggest that in that case you have to keep changing your internet banking password every now and then, to ensure that this particular password is not being accessed. If you have it for a longer period of time, then there is a problem. So I would, in that case, if you're going to handle all your online transactions sitting from US, and you're not going to have physical access to your bank, then it is ideally better that, since it is online now, you can change the password at a frequent interval of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Any other question? Anybody else?
May I ask? I'm Srilal.
Please,
sir. First of all, it was excellent and very simple way of understanding and such a complex subject. This question is, we actually log into various professional websites for years together. We were probably members in those things at the starting of internet itself. And as it came through the last decade and then maybe the last 5 years, there has been a lot of attractions which is coming. Like, for example, we log into a website, he said white papers are available. So you download the white paper, and then I think that is something which is conceptually written down, etc.
Yeah. Yes, sir. No, I think, see, this is nothing but digital imprints, sir. See, we all, though we say that, okay, these are all, way back websites where we have been accessing, whether it has been updated, whether those websites have taken the necessary precautions, that we are not aware.
Yeah, sure.
Isn't it not so?
Yeah,
so,
right,
and yes, isn't it not so? And today the vulnerability is so much, sir. We cannot, completely trust that those yesteryear's websites are genuine and authentic. They might be so, but they would have still been susceptible to this kind of cybercrimes, which is not in our knowledge, which has not come to our knowledge. So it is ideally better if you do not have any further, necessity for, being in that group or that website. It is ideally better to come out of that, because you need not, continue to have access to that kind of website unless and until you know for sure that, it has been protected. And these days they say that it has been protected through firewall and other things, antivirus package and other things. Nothing is 100% internet secured, sir. That is a hard fact. See, nothing comes with a foolproof guarantee that, yes, if you install this particular antivirus package, you're 100% safe. Maybe so, till to a certain extent. But as I said, we have to also exercise due diligence when it comes to, accessing the internet, giving our passwords, and no banks for that matter, or no organization asks for your password and other details. So when you get across, or when you come across such kind of calls or emails, please do not share. Avoid sharing those details, because those are nothing but, susceptible to these kind of crimes. So it is a gateway for that. So please do not do that. Ensure that you repeatedly ask that person why they need that information. When you had not, asked, when you're not prompted for that, why have been asked for that? So when you start asking questions, I'm sure that the opposite person must have realized that you are no longer a soft target, and they would immediately cut your call, or immediately they'll stop, sending those mails. So that is the way you can protect yourself, because we cannot completely blame the banks or the organization or the government for that matter.
A related question, one more, if it is okay with the moderator.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
See, these days we hear in technical domain we work on, we hear about blockchain systems, Bitcoin being not done, and there is a lot of activities which is actually happening at the thing of IoT, MI, AI, so many things which is really coming in.
Correct.
So the gap is actually increasing exponentially of what is really happening, So I think, what is the kind of thing, because we are always following inside this one. And I was told that, there is a blockchain print of imprint of everything what we have really done in this firmed up, and then it could be traceable, both directions and multi-directions.
Correct,
So
sir,
is it covered under any law, legal?
Exactly, sir. Actually, we are, though not having, apart from our counterparts, right now, we do not have any specific cyber-related act. So that is the reason the government is still, having this discussions with both the houses in the parliament, reviewing the Personal Data Protection Act, which is shortly going to be enforced, because there are certain loopholes which you had rightly now you had just quoted now. Like this is how it is happening. So these are all to be, addressed by the authorities and the subject matter experts. So only then, when that is foolproof, they can, enforce this act. That is the Personal Data Protection Act, which we are still awaiting for. Once when it comes, maybe it might be helpful to all of us, because with respect to, this sensitive data protection, and with respect to the financial aspect transactions and other things, apart from the other statutes which is available for us, including the IT Act.
There is a lot of economic, or maybe to implement this, there is a lot of cost involved in this,
Correct.
This thing. So that is something which is at the background of this. Do you think so?
Definitely, the governments have to look into all the aspects, the economic aspect, the financial aspects, the the security aspect, and also the privacy aspect, because privacy is a very, very fundamental right of every citizen. So that cannot be compromised. And every individual citizen has a right to his privacy also. So as far as the Puttaswamy judgment recently, which was the landmark judgment with respect to right to privacy, again, every citizen has his right. So that being the case, the government has to think on manifold measures and come up with this act. So that is the reason why it is taking time, because we actually are also taking certain aspects of the GDPR, that is the European Union. So that being the case, how we can, enforce or collect everything together and make it more, a better statute, because we are the third affected country in the world. So we have to take our, leads from the successful counterparts, and also from our European Union, which has come up with this GDPR recently.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.